Kia ora, I'm Chelsea Daniels, and this is The Front Page, a daily podcast presented by the New Zealand Herald. Is cash really still king? For years, more stores are no longer accepting cash as payment. And it's easy to see why, right? With 94% of transactions in 2024 being digital. They're also not obliged to either. In 2023, the Reserve Bank of New Zealand found cash usage for everyday purchases had decreased from 95.8% in 2019 to 57.2% that year. Apparently, just 8% of New Zealanders were regular or daily cash users. But despite all that, today the Reserve Bank's opened public consultation on a proposal that would force banks to set up hundreds, if not thousands, of additional ATMs and branches to make sure people have access to cash. Today on the front page, NZ Herald Wellington business editor Jenée Tibshraeny joins us to discuss why cash might be here to stay. First off, Jenée, give us an outline on this public consultation paper. What's it telling or asking people to do?
Right, Chelsea. The Reserve Bank is worried that over the past decade, about 40% of bank branches have closed. It's concerned that people don't have easy enough access to services that help them trade in cash. So the bank has done some spatial mapping, and it wants to make sure that most people in urban areas can walk to cash services. So that could be an ATM or a bank branch. And most people in rural areas can drive to these services. So the bank basically wants to set a standard in place that ensures the vast majority of people have much easier access to cash services.
And presumably they've done some kind of survey or something asking people how much they care about cash?
They have. So according to the bank, people do care a lot about cash. Only about 8% of those surveyed rely on cash as their sole means of payment. But the bank notes that about 80% of adults use cash sometimes. Also, 56% store cash. So, I had a call with the head of this project from the Reserve Bank earlier today, and he said, looking ahead, he still believes there will always be a need for cash. He doesn't see a demise of cash.
I would be interested, though, what sometimes means, right? Like, are people getting cash out to do their grocery shops, or are they putting a couple of bucks in the vending machine for a can of Coke? Like, I wonder what sometimes is. I guess in New Zealand, there are no rules at the moment to protect the use of cash. If a business doesn't want to accept it, they're not actually obligated to accept it. But the Reserve Bank reckons cash still matters in this respect. What are some of the reasons it gives?
That's right. So, for small businesses, a lot of them trade in cash. And, if you're running a small business in a rural part of New Zealand and there's no bank branch near you, it's pretty difficult for you to get the money that you get from your customers to put in the bank. So you might need to shut your shop earlier, to travel far, to go to the bank, to deposit your money. So the Reserve Bank is saying, more readily accessible cash services would help productivity of small businesses. Also, it points to sort of social, cultural things like, sports clubs and things might use cash. I was talking to a colleague earlier who is an avid golf player, and he said, well, you need cash for raffles.
Fair enough. You do need cash for raffles.
Yeah, as you do. And, the bank also said for privacy reasons. Some people might not, it's not necessarily dodgy, but they might not want their transactions tracked. So that's the case that the bank makes. You talk to younger people just chatting to colleagues and other colleagues in the office who are not part of the golf club, and they think this is ridiculous. Younger people don't use cash at all. A lot of them you talk to.
Well, then that's what I mean. I know that using cash went down over COVID, say, because A, we weren't going out nearly as much, and B, we were washing our fruit and vegetables when we got home from countdown, so there was no point in, using cash. But I do wonder how many people use cash still.
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think the bank's consultation, I guess it'll hope to get some some good feedback on that. So the question I've been asking the people from the Reserve Bank earlier today was, is the proposed response that they have to the problem of equity of some people not having enough access to cash services, is their response proportionate? It is pretty dramatic. So the Reserve Bank's saying that if banks met the standards that they want to put in place, they could do it in a couple of ways. Either they could all pool their resources and create banking hubs that customers from any bank could go to withdraw cash, deposit cash, or swap it. Currently, there are 5 of these hubs throughout the country. The Reserve Bank's saying that to meet the standard, if banks pooled together, they would need to create 1,288 of these hubs.
So we've got 5 at the moment.
Exactly. Now, that would be a pretty big undertaking. Otherwise, the Reserve Bank acknowledges actually, banks might not want to pool together. They might want to have, an ANZ ATM or an ASB one or so on. So if they did their own thing, currently there are just over 2,000 bank-owned sites like branches and ATMs, just over 2,000. Banks would need to add another 3,000 to the mix.
On top of that.
3,000 more on top of that. So 2 routes, either you pull together or the banks do their own thing. Either way, we're talking substantive investment by banks.
Yeah, well, how much are we talking here?
Well, the Reserve Bank reckons the cost is not that big. It reckons it'll cost banks about $100 million a year. Now, it makes the point, for banks, that's not much money. It's about 1% of their combined annual profits. Now, you can only imagine what the banks might think of this. They're probably not going to appreciate the Reserve Bank forcing them to spend $100 million on this. Now, the Reserve Bank, it acknowledges that banks might pass that cost on to customers. And if it does, the Reserve Bank reckons the cost wouldn't be that big. Like, let's say, you have a home loan. It might add about 1.8 basis points to the interest rate that you pay. So if you pay 4.5%, you might end up paying 4.518%. That is assuming the bank passes the entire cost on to you. Now, will they, won't they? I'm not sure that, competition might prevent them from doing so. But, having more readily available cash services will come at a cost.
Well, and also, where are you going to put them all as well? Is my question.
Details. Details. The bank has done some geospatial mapping. In order for it to get to these numbers, it's looked at, having, as I said earlier, in urban areas, walking distance, and rural areas, driving distance. They've put some maths around, what that means. So they have looked into that. No doubt this would be a massive logistical exercise for the banks.
And I suppose there's the question as well about, is cash even that productive these days?
Well, that is a fair point. Is it productive for a business to receive cash and then have to traipse off to the bank to deposit it? You could argue that actually moving to a more cashless society, for some businesses at least, enhances productivity, streamlines everything, makes it easier for them to, track their sales and all that type of thing. And another element that banks might raise is that there's been this real push against money laundering. And, cash, it can be beneficial. You can make transactions privately, but arguably, it's harder to keep track of money laundering or the drug trade and all that type of thing. Now, again, we talked to the Reserve Bank about this, and they said, well, people use all sorts of methods to do dodgy things like cryptocurrency or other forms as well. So the Reserve Bank said we don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater in this regard.
Well, I suppose it's, when those small business owners are taking all of that cash to a bank as well, if you didn't have to do that, then you wouldn't have to risk walking down the street with $10,000 in your pocket either.
Well, yeah, that's no doubt another point. And, Different business owners probably say they've been doing this type of thing for years, but there is that question as well around the infrastructure that goes around establishing hubs to transact more cash, be it from the user side or from the the side of the banks, maintaining, servicing, security, all that goes with it.
Do you ever carry cash nowadays?
No, never. Oh, honestly, not too much. Not too much, yeah. Only card and Apple Pay, yeah.
Hardly.
Yes, I actually have some in my bag.
Almost forget how to use a cash machine.
Yes, I do use cash.
When was the last time you used cash, do you think, roughly, to buy something?
I reckon maybe 6 months ago.
Like probably 3 or 4 months ago at least,
Yeah.
if not longer.
Going out with my friend Rosie when she had paid for something online, and then I gave her the cash.
This morning, actually, I bought a coffee.
Well, we know that there's a massive generational divide around carrying cash already, right? Now, I'm assuming our golfing mate is a bit older than the two of us in terms of, getting excited about carrying cash around. And a year or two ago, actually, there was all this talk about girl maths, right? And there was this suggestion that when you pay something for something in cash, then it's free because cash doesn't matter. There is that kind of sense that cash is lesser than, I suppose, amongst younger generations. Would you agree?
I mean, I haven't seen research on it. I know the Reserve Bank has done a lot, but if I did a vibe check on the street,
that's what we're after.
I think there would be a generational difference. Now, where that difference might go away is if there's a natural disaster and we can't use electronic ways of transmission, or if systems go down, then cash would be handy. That is a factor. The Reserve Bank, though, is of the view quite firmly that there will always be a place for cash. Interestingly, in recent years, there was the bank did quite a bit of work on whether it should issue a digital currency. So that's taking things in a complete different direction. And Ian Wolford, the person who's heading up this physical cash work at the bank, he was in charge of the digital cash work. And today he told me that they're actually pushing pause on that digital cash work. They're going to look at addressing some of the issues in other ways, like looking at modernising the payment network. So it is interesting that they do seem to be changing their focus and going back to good old physical cash.
Yeah, I mean, going from digital cash and doing a complete 180 to physical cash is a pretty big move. And like you said, it's pretty drastic, suggesting all of these ATMs and branches, et cetera, I suppose, I don't know if you know this, the Australian government actually announced a couple of years ago that it would actually mandate businesses. Is that something that the New Zealand government has been looking into?
Yeah, that is an interesting point. In Australia, some businesses are made to accept cash. Again, that would no doubt be an equity issue. We asked the Reserve Bank about that today, and they said that that's something they will consider. So consider requiring businesses to accept cash. I know, like if you walk around cities, a lot of businesses say they don't accept cash at all. It'll be interesting to see what the politicians' responses to that is as well.
Well, I suppose they'll be looking pretty closely at how things are going in Australia. I understand that it only came in January 1st this year. So basically large retailers have been required to accept cash for essential items like groceries and fuel. It applies to in-person transactions, obviously, of $500 or less between the hours of 7 and 9. They'll be looking at that every, after 3 years or so. But small businesses with an annual turnover under $10 million are generally exempt. So I suppose we'll just keep an eye on what the Aussies are doing over there. I saw the Reserve Bank as one of the positives of keeping cash around. And not only, you spoke about natural disasters, of course, and when things go awry and when you can't use your card, etc. It's obviously always good to have cash around. But in terms of another thing, and I quite like this one, is, teaching kids financial literacy is perhaps a little bit easier with cash as well. And I kind of liked that they had thought about that, and also the cultural identity part of it as well.
Yeah, look, I know, and you know, the cultural stuff that might go back to my old mates golfing raffles and so on, you know, community groups using cash. Reserve Bank recognised, you know, cash is often used as, you know, a present or for gifts. And as you say, Chelsea, for teaching kids about money. I remember as a child being, you know, given $2 and sent to the dairy with my sister, and we could pick what we wanted for $2 and, you know, painstakingly get a pack of lollies, and, you know, and that taught us a valuable lesson. So the bank is looking at things pretty holistically. It talks about well-being impacts of cash. I think these are probably undisputed. I think the question, though, is whether the response it's proposing is proportionate.
Yeah, exactly. So people actually have a chance to have their say around this public consultation paper. Hey, what happens from here?
Yeah, that's right. So there are a few documents on the Reserve Bank's website. They're actually pretty easy to read. Judging from our Herald commenters on our website, it seems like a topic that everyone has an opinion on. The Reserve Bank is welcoming public submissions. These close on April 10. So from that point, it'll take things further. And then separately, the bank said that in April or around then, it'll issue another consultation on this issue I talked about before, about the modernisation of the payments network. So that's going to be its focus now, instead of that digital currency. So there's a bit on the go, definitely.
Yeah, well, we'll have to get you back on and go through that another time. Thank you so much for joining us, Jenée.
Thanks, Chelsea. Good to be here.
That's it for this episode of The Front Page. You can read more about today's stories and extensive news coverage at nzherald.co.nz. The Front Page is hosted and produced by me, Chelsea Daniels. Kane Dickey is our studio operator, Richard Martin, our producer and editor, and our executive producer is Jane Yee. Follow The Front Page on the iHeart app or wherever you get your podcasts, and join us next time for another look beyond the headlines.